We are now on the internet. Midlife pilot Brian will be our internet check source. How's it looking over there at Grand Central Station?
Oh man, it's on. It's
Sweet.
happening.
Sweet. Well, let's not waste any time. I'm ready to get into this one. How about you?
Hell yeah.
All right, let's do it. Those are the sweet sounds of Brian Siskind on the keys, and we welcome you inside the Midlife Pilot Podcast. This is a podcast all about flying in the midlife and learning to fly and all things related to aviation. And this is episode 22, and we're really glad that you're joining us. My name is Chris Moran, the Midlife Pilot on YouTube, and joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host and your friend, Nashville native Brian. Nashville resident, right down the street from Music Row, Brian Siskind.
The
Good
whole
evening.
thing, man. The whole thing is I've gotten on your case about always saying like Music City straight from Music Row or whatever. And I'm like, hey man, I live on the west side of town. I'm not in Music Row. So now you try to pivot, and then here I am being called a Nashville native. I guess 20 something plus years I might as well be. But anyway, hey man, how's it going? I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that everybody else is coming in the chat, and we're super excited about our guest tonight. I mean, I love talking to you, Chris, but this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to it. Real quick housekeeping items, as we always like to get out of the way at the beginning. If you're hearing the audio version of this, we record every other Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. And so much of this show is based around the community and interacting with the community and just the comments and questions and things that come from that. So if you are able to join us, we'd love to have you on the Midlife Pilot YouTube channel every other Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. We've got a great group in the chat already tonight, lots of activity there, and I think everyone is excited to jump right into it. So I think we should do that. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, let's welcome our guest tonight is someone well known in the aviation YouTube sphere. Channel, I guess, is a couple years old now, maybe a little more than that. Eric is with us, the Socal Flying Monkey, and thank you so much for agreeing to come on tonight and hang out with our group.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I have been following your channel from the beginning, I think, although like many people, I bet you a lot of us came in with the video that you bought your plane for under $30,000 and it changed your life. That was I think probably the first one I saw of yours. It's got a really nice Cherokee 6 that you totally transformed. But why don't you take a step back from it and just kind of, for those who may not know of you or your channel, like talk a little about what you're doing with aviation and aviation content online, and just about you. What's your story, Eric?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel, I guess I started it pretty much right around when the film business shut down due to COVID. I'm a cinematographer, and I shoot commercials and TV and feature films, and the industry kind of shut down. And I had been starting to make a few aviation YouTube videos before that, but then I kind of just jumped right into it because there was nothing else to do, and kind of set out just to tell my own stories and have the creative satisfaction and fulfillment of telling my own stories and not somebody else's, and trying to share what's awesome about aviation through video, with other pilots and other people interested in it.
That's awesome. That's super cool. Your one thing that I really, really enjoyed, there's a lot of things, we'll get into all this as we go, but one of the things that I really, really like about your channel is the adventures and how much your family, I mean, you're able to use aviation for a lot of things. You use it for work, a lot, but your family is such an integral part of the channel, and the adventures you get to take and travel with them. And I think that's a pretty unique aspect of your channel, and I've loved some of your trips, your Sedona trips, and Dave Matthews Band trips, and then even the series with Jason Miller, the pinch hitter course that your wife did. I thought that was awesome, excellent content. Your family seemed to be a kind of an integral part of the flying experience for you.
Yeah, I definitely, when I got my private pilot certificate, decided like, hey, I was coming near the end of it and decided, what am I going to do with this? And I think in the back of my head was always, hey, let's use this to go on lots of family adventures. So kind of set out to do that in the beginning when we bought the Cherokee 180. And I just had dreams of like going cool places and seeing where it would take us. And it really has been amazing. I mean, we upgraded to the 6 so that we could take more stuff and fly farther range and be more comfortable, just get, more passenger comfort for everybody. And that has really allowed us to branch out and do longer trips and explore new destinations. And yeah, what's interesting, I think, about it, and I've been thinking about this lately a lot and sharing it with a few people, is that, you can drive somewhere in an RV or a road trip or whatever, but being in the airplane makes you gives you like an excuse to find weird places that you wouldn't normally go. It's just because like they have cool airports. It's like, hey, we can fly there. I've been to, like, I don't know if I would have gone to Sedona so easily or quickly. Maybe wouldn't have jumped on it if I hadn't heard like it's an amazing approach and the runway is kind of challenging on this mesa, and also it's a cool destination. But it's kind of like the excuse, right? It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
excuse to go somewhere now. We're going to fly to a cool new place. There's an airport there, like the place we went to in Mexico, Laredo down in Baja. It's like, well, I can fly there. Well, let's just go there because we can, right? So it just
Totally.
makes things, different adventures. It's super cool.
Yeah, I've always tried to explain to people that are not flying people that it's almost like there's this whole hidden world that we're in. It's in and around us all the time, but you just don't see that. All of a sudden, it's like this network pops up that now you have access to, that other people don't have access to, and it does preordain in some weird way, your adventures, right? Because they are where they are. But man, there's so many times I mean, I just had a trip where I got stuck in Shreveport, Louisiana for a couple of days, and I got to explore that town while I was waiting for the weather. And I just thought, that's completely why I enjoyed. If I would have gone to Shreveport with these expectations of like, oh, I hear they have a new burgeoning art district I'd like to check out, or whatever, it'd be like this whole different set of expectations you're weighing and everything. But when you just are kind of happening through the network as it is, much less having these destinations that are proximate maybe to places you've considered, it's such a fulfilling thing, especially it reminds you of what a gift it is in the United States, to be able to have such vast territory and varied terrain and all this to explore. But one of the things that I see somebody bringing it up in the chat as well, that and you had mentioned earlier, is this pinch hitter video series that you did. I thought was one of the best things that you've made, and I had when you're talking about incorporating your family, I mean, I have several questions maybe that are maybe probing about that, because on one hand, it's a real choice to incorporate your family and have them, available to the world in some way, right? Like that's a privacy choice. That's a difficult thing, I would imagine, to navigate on some level, because Chris also, is filmed a lot with his daughter, and I think that especially with kids and whatever, you've probably got a lot to kind of consider about that. So I'm wondering if you had any thoughts on just sort of what it is to choose to include your family from a YouTube perspective, and then secondly, with the pinch hitter course, my only follow up to that would be, has your wife stuck with it in any way? Is it something that's already kind of degraded that you feel like you need to revisit, or what's the continuation of that?
Yeah, well, for those people who haven't seen that pinch hitter, we made 2 videos about her adventure in learning how to control the airplane, learning how to land the airplane in case of an emergency. That's what the whole idea behind it was about. And it really was a transformation. She went from having basically like take anti-anxiety medication to even get in an airplane, and then she got used to being in the airplane and was really anxious about even touching the controls, would never do it. And then Jason Miller from the Finer Points, he agreed to, do this pinch hitter course for her. And over a couple of days, we went up to Northern California and did it. And it just totally transformed her. And those two videos, I think I'm almost most proud of those two videos on my channel more than anything, because put a lot of resources into it, a lot of time and effort, and told the story from her point of view. So like creatively, I think I'm really happy with those. And the story, I feel like is so compelling. It was so much fun to tell, and it was so personal. And just watching her go through that transformation, for me as a pilot, I was stoked, because now she likes to fly, which was amazing. I just didn't even expect it. Has she kept up with it? Well, occasionally she'll take the controls, but almost never. And it's definitely a thing where I think she needs to do a couple more days, maybe call Jason back up, or when he comes down, just try to get her back in the plane. She realizes that too. And I think she wants to do it. Just every time we're going on a trip, I'm like, hey, you want to take the control? She's tired or dealing with something else, or we're in like, possible almost icing conditions or whatever. It never seems to be the right time. I guess coming back from Washington 2 days ago probably would have been a good time, but they were both sleeping in the back, so.
Well, ultimately, it's still a huge accomplishment just for her to have some actual primacy developed, right? Like she's got some foundation, whether it's manicured and kept or not, just to have that is so much better than nothing. And ultimately, if it allows her to feel safer as she goes and feel more confident and not have as much anxiety, totally worth it just for that. But that series was so good. And I love how Jason, sort of metaphored the whole thing for her. It was just really artful instruction. It was really great. But yeah, so
Jason is
amazing. He's an amazing CFI. Watching him work and read her, like just be so in tune with where she was at emotionally through the whole thing. When she was like done, he was like, yeah, you're done, right? You're feeling like overwhelmed and done. She's like, how can you even tell? He knows. It's just so such an expert CFI. It was really amazing to watch. I was really surprised by it.
I got a chance to meet him at Osh, not this year, but the previous year. And I told him a similar thing, because I've watched a ton of YouTube content over the last 4 or 5 years of aviation. And I think he is hands down, as far as YouTube CFIs, folks that are online, he is the best at that craft. I just think he has it's so apparent to me that he has such just a complete understanding and is connected to just all parts of the aviation experience, the aerodynamics, the airplane, the machine, he just gets it every part. And he's such a great communicator. And I just think he's the best. I think he's the best out there. No question.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
So, I wanted to ask real quick too. I mean, one of the things I couldn't help but, notice about your channel is you really, but if you compare it to maybe a lot of people that are really hell bent on, I'm going to release a new video every Monday, and I'm going to sort of play the algorithm game for my channel and all that. You have done clearly a quality over quantity approach, and obviously it's worked. I mean, everybody here is not trying to be a mega YouTuber or anything like that, but I do find it interesting from a creative perspective that you've got this kind of standard. As obviously you're a professional cinematographer, you're only going to stoop so low in terms of like cranking out work, right? It's not quality, but still it seems to be very conscious.
Yeah, definitely. Had decided early on, like, especially after the first video kind of went viral and we got a lot of views, and I had an opportunity. I had to think, like, what do I want to do with this? And I just decided, like, I don't want it to be a full-time job, because I already have video film production as a full-time job, and it kind of definitely takes the shine off of the experience of doing it sometimes when you're under pressure to create something somebody else wants, or you have to do it regularly or whatever. So I just decided it was going to be something I was going to do for my own creative satisfaction. And I've definitely compromised a little bit on that here and there, because you do have to kind of publish regularly. I also want people to see the stuff, so it's a balance. Like I want to get the algorithm, pick it up, and get it out there, because I want people to see the stories and get moved by it in some way, or get inspired by it, or just take something away from it. So if nobody sees it, well, that's a downside. So it's kind of a balance. But I've definitely I definitely put in a lot of time and effort into each video to try to make myself happy with it creatively before I publish it. And yeah, I probably at the expense of like the algorithm going like, oh wow, people are coming back over and over every week or every 2 weeks. So I would love to have the time to like, put in, do more, to publish more videos, but I have a full-time job. So
Yeah.
it's probably going to be at this pace for a while.
We have had conversations ad nauseum, probably to the disdain of some listeners, about this idea of like the kind of inside baseball of YouTube publishing, and like what goes. And Brian, we had a fly in at a house that we have down on the Outer Banks of North Carolina over the spring, and a group of us got together, and Brian espoused us with his deep philosophical thoughts and all of the things that he comes up with. And I'm bringing it up again. I see you shaking your head, Brian. I'm bringing it up again because Eric almost hit on it there, exactly like what Brian says. Brian has this thing where he said we were talking about the kind of the drive to publish, and Brian and I are the opposite personalities. I get super stressed and then paralyzed by the fact that I can't get a video out in time. I get really caught up in that part of it. And Brian is the exact opposite. And his take was like, his line was like, nobody cares. And I'm mischaracterizing it, but the takeaway was basically like the stuff that Brian's creating, he's creating for himself. It because ultimately nobody really cares, like from a viewer standpoint. Brian can explain his thought better, but we got way deep into that one night at the beach house, and that's, you just kind of hit on it when you kind of said, you wanted to, your priority was to make things that were satisfying to you. And it was your kind of creative outlet, and not under the demands of all the other, the
Yeah, I
things
mean,
that
I
we
think
get.
it comes down to just you can't make things for other people unless you can get stuff done yourself. And the biggest inhibitor to getting the stuff done is a lot of that perfectionism, or just being mired in reconsideration of ideas over and over again. And so nobody cares. It's just like a weird sort of mental shortcut that I've come up with is kind of a manifesto of like whatever the little detail is that is keeping me from getting this thing done. I'm quite confident the nature of that detail, like whether this light is just right, or whether this thing is, or whether this word, really nobody cares. I mean, and ultimately, not to get too weird about it, but I mean, I think about like, I've got people in my family that, 2 generations ago that I'm like, I wonder what they did, like wonder what they were like. So, I mean, obviously video and everything is forever, but it's like, I don't know, just I come from the kind of send it, let it fly kind of school, the opposite of you, Eric. Because, and I should probably take a note out of your playbook and actually try a little harder. But ultimately, it's just about I'm just trying to synthesize things that I'm feeling and thinking at almost the speed of which I'm doing that, and that's why also I have a lot of videos that have less than 100 views. So this works out, I think, just right. Like you get what you give. But yeah, I mean, it's a way, but Eric, like I always wonder, from your perspective, you're hauling around, what are you working with, like Aries or, crazy, really high end, cinematography equipment. And then all of a sudden now you get to sort of do your own, sort of personal masterpieces in this world of aviation that you love and all of that. And you've got, GoPros, and you've got, you know,
Yeah.
like, so how do you, how does that sit with you, or how have you wrestled with that? Because I mean, there's people, I mean, what's that guy that always flies around that's got like the Guthmiller guy or
Matt
whatever?
Guthmiller, yeah, yeah.
Like he's got like a whole team of people following him around with red cameras or whatever, which is fine. But I'm just saying, like, how do you manage that, Eric? How do you balance out like what is capable of being done versus what you're kind of just able to do?
Yeah, that's a hard one, because the GoPros can be super frustrating. Half the time they don't work, or there's always a problem with one of them. I've kind of got it down now. Like I've kind of got the like, you know, procedure down with like shooting with multiple GoPros and synchronizing them automatically with GoPro Labs and all this stuff. So it's a little less painful than it was in the beginning, but I think yeah, I'd love to do stuff that's like higher quality, and sometimes I break out the red camera and shoot, things with that. But for the most part, I don't. I just use my phone or something else.
Yeah, I love how people. If you're not following Eric on Instagram, you got to do it, because when you go somewhere, your Instagram stories are essentially as well produced and put together as anything. You're flying somewhere. It's like it might be 25 little stories in a row, but you really feel like I just kind of just watched a whole sort of immersive trip. So even like the small dose stuff you're doing is really, really well done with simple tools. I mean, and it's easy to say like, oh, only these GoPros. You mean these tiny cameras that can shoot 4K? Like, it's easy for us to, as older people to, to sort of get dismissive about the technology. All the technology is amazing, right? So fair play to that.
Yeah. It's been a definitely like a learning curve using the like more consumer kind of stuff, but I've kind of like in the past couple months just resigned to go, oh, I'm just going to use my phone and GoPros and it's going to be fine. People probably can't really tell the difference or whatever.
Nobody cares.
And then I think what I'm going to do is, for certain videos where I have like a really clear vision of what I want it to be, some epic video, then I'll like bust out the higher production quality kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
Yeah.
the GoPros and the iPhone, I've just sort of said, well, the iPhones are so good now. They look great. If you know what you're doing.
I appreciate some of the details that go into the things that you do, even with your GoPros. Things like, I mean, you do a really good job managing their limited, like, we're going to get in the weeds for a minute, but dynamic range in there, and I'm sure you're using some form of gradiated NDs or some whatever you're doing for cockpit stuff. But I also love the graphic stuff that you do. Like, I totally appreciate the detail that goes into like tracking. Like I watched one recently. You had somebody in the back seat. It was you and Poppins in the front, and there was a guy in the back seat. And just the first shot, the wide of him in the back seat, you were tracking him with his name, and because I could tell it moving, I mean, just barely moving with the bounces of the plane. And then you went the tight shot and you didn't do that. But I mean, the details of like those little details are the ones that make you can watch that and say, yeah, this guy, he knows what he's doing. Like there's some details that go into those things for sure.
Yeah, I try to throw that stuff in. It's fun. And for anybody who's interested in like making their own airplane videos, and I think Brian's probably seen this stuff, but on our Patreon, I have like a whole series of how to, make aviation videos, from the basic stuff about sound and the GoPros to the GoPro settings, to getting the most range, to setting up a multicam timeline, to doing basic color correction, to doing power windows on color correction. I've just sort of been, just anytime I discover something new, I make like a little how-to video, be like, oh my God, I just figured out how to save myself 3 hours in this. And that's been fun to put together as little bonus stuff for the patrons and things like that.
That's awesome.
So I think you're underestimating it when you say little stuff for the patrons, because I was shocked when I saw the quality of that instructive content and just the sheer value of it. My first thought was, if this guy knows Jason Miller and Jason Miller has his own platform, how could you not make your own instruction platform for exactly that kind of thing? Because there's so many people that have, from the most basic level of just, how do I set up one camera and get ATC audio and not have it be a big mess for me, versus multicam versus all that. I mean, you've got so much valuable content, even for somebody that I would consider, I'm a person that does it by trade on some level. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, like the way that, like because I use DaVinci as well, Resolve, and your time code and syncing. And I saw just, today you were like, oh, I figured out how to get the iPad recordings to be time coded, or whatever it was. And I'm like, my God, like, so I don't know, that the Patreon value that you offer is not pedestrian or phoned in on any level. It's insanely valuable, well-produced content, which I should not be surprised, but I was surprised.
Oh, thanks. And honestly, if it were up to me, I would only create for a platform on Patreon. Like this is a much longer discussion, but like the YouTube ad rev and like all the YouTube stuff, you're just at the mercy of this algorithm. I would much rather have a bunch of people who really want to see the content, and it's a few dollars a month, and that's how it's all supported. that's why I put the majority of the stuff on Patreon. Like I put the main YouTube videos, but then I create a lot more stuff on Patreon.
Yeah.
If it were up to me, like if Patreon were more of a discovery platform too, that would be great, but it just isn't. So we have to do the YouTube to like direct people over there. But that's really for me where it's at, because there's so much more interaction with the community, with our Discord and the trips that we're doing. Like it's just so much. I like that platform. I like the idea of it, right?
Well, I'm now headed there to sign up because I also need all that content, and everyone listening also should visit that too at patreon.com/SoCal Flying Monkey. Is where you should go to look at that. A lot of folks in the chat saying the same thing. Travis, Ben Singer, Chris, Nathan Ballard, all agreeing. Eric does a great job with the cinematographer expertise.
Yeah, well,
That's great stuff. So
yeah, thanks everyone for the support. It's just so fun.
Yeah, and everybody get your questions in here. We've got I guess about 30 minutes left, and we'd like to start funneling in some of the chat questions, because that's the stuff that we wouldn't think of asking. Even though I've got a list, I've actually got a list.
how do you want to
Um,
go? You want to go oldest to newest, or do you want to start and work our way backwards?
how about weirdest to most normal?
Well, I'm not going to read every one. Pick them. Oh well, Ben's here already. Hey, oh, good. How about we just start with our friend Ben Singer. Ben was one of the guys that came down and hung out with us in our fly-in the Outer Banks in the spring, and his nickname was the Sage. He was the old wise one among us that kept us all from doing anything stupid while we were there. Ben Singer said, "Question for Eric: Where did the name SoCal Flying Monkey come from?"
That's a really good question. Okay, so yeah, I was making this YouTube channel and I needed a name for it, and I like monkeys a lot, and I thought Flying Monkey was pretty cool. I don't know, it's just funny. I don't want to take things too seriously. It's sort of like a little whimsical, like don't take yourself too seriously kind of thing. And then I looked up Flying Monkey, and there's already a channel I think called Flying Monkey, so I had to add SoCal in there, which I think is cool. It helps people know where we're at, I guess. But yeah, it's kind of a stupid name, but we're stuck with it. It's cool. I don't know. I guess it's because like I couldn't think of anything else, and I love monkeys. I actually, when I was growing up, we lived in Brazil for a little while. True story. I'm not making this up. And we took a trip to the Amazon, to Manaus. It's in the Amazon rainforest, and this monkey took my dad's lighter and bit me. Yeah, it got bit by a monkey.
Wow.
I didn't actually get bit by a monkey, but he stole my dad's lighter. So that's it. That's where my love for monkeys came from. I like to say I got bit by a radioactive monkey and became the SoCal Flying Monkey.
So, like everything else, is childhood trauma.
Yeah, it's childhood trauma.
I'll piggyback off of that. So you have one of the cool things that everybody picks up on right away are the nicknames. The nicknames for everyone in your family that flies with you, right? So your wife is Poppins, and then you've got Goomba and Skyrat are your daughters. What is there any? Are those just names? Did you already have those names? Are those already kind of family names, or are those for flying in the YouTube channel world?
Those came about as a result of the YouTube channel, except for Goomba. We've always called my daughter that. I'm not sure exactly why. But it says the character from like Super Mario, that little angry mushroom.
Mm-hmm.
I guess when she was really little, she reminded me of that character. So I'd be like, "What's up, Goomba?" Yeah, Poppins is just because she packs like so much stuff, so she always has like you need you have any hand sanitizer, she has it. You need a first aid kit, she has it. Like she has this bag she can pull out like anything that you need. So she's like Mary Poppins. And then yes, my other daughter, she picked the name Skyrat. I'm not sure why. She decided that I guess birds are like the rats of the sky, so she said she was a sky rat. But now she's Sky Duck because she's going to University of Oregon, so she changed her handle to Sky Duck. So
Gotcha. That's cool. This isn't a question, but a comment from Alex in the chat who said, "How did we decide that PA-32 was the perfect plane for us? It was because of you. 350 hours later and going strong in his PA-32."
I love it. What's up, Alex? How's it going, man? Alex is a patron of ours, super involved in the community, and always love his posts on Discord and everything. So I definitely, I get messages like that, and that people pick certain things. like the airplane or avionics, or just the idea to get back into flying or to drop, their career and move into flying. Those messages are like the most amazing thing, as a creative person, to know that the energy I'm putting into creating content is connecting with people and moving them in some way, is the most fulfilling thing as a creative person that you can possibly imagine. So I really appreciate those messages.
Absolutely, and that goes for even for really you don't have to be getting huge numbers to get that feeling. I can vouch for that, but also, I think that any musician or artist or anyone that really cares about what they do will all say the same thing, irrespective of what scale they operate on. They get um, all the thrill and all the gratification in the world out of just one person meaningfully making it known that they've heard it or they've seen it or they experienced whatever they created, and it meant something to them. That is the greatest exchange I think that anybody creative can ever have. So yeah, and even better that you provide an outlet for people just to tell you that all day, every day. No, just, but but no, it's so good, man. But I wanted to we have David Moscadelli, but can we get Josh's question next too, because that's a really good one.
Yeah, for sure. David, who has been a member of our community from the almost the beginning, said, "Any plans to upgrade from the Cherokee Complex or Twin?"
Yeah. Hey, David. Yeah. So I would love to. We were thinking about, are we always going to live in LA, or we're going to move somewhere and can maybe commute back here for work? Or I travel all over for work, so it would be nice to be able to fly myself a little more, have something a little faster, a little more capable. So I don't know. I would love like a Seneca with ice protection, turbo Seneca with ice. That would be amazing. But the insurance and maintenance and the added fuel burn is probably out of budget for now. So I would consider even a turbo Saratoga with ice. I don't know. I would love to, but right now I don't think it's in the plans. Not for a little while. I think we got to get both girls through college, and then we can start thinking about things like that.
Josh, this is one Brian mentioned. Josh, another member of our Patreon community. How would you counsel someone looking to fly into the LA area? We just dropped our daughter off in Claremont, California for college, and are going to make the cross country literally someday. Got any counsel for folks coming to fly in the LA area?
Yeah, flying in LA is great. We almost always have good weather, and there's a lot of airports and a lot of cool places to go, like Big Bear or Catalina, or like Kern Valley or Santa Barbara or San Diego. There's so many great places to go. I think I have a video about the LA Special Flight Rules area that walks you through kind of how to fly over LAX and transit the Bravo. Otherwise, it's just really about being on your game on the radios. It's a really busy airspace, and there's a lot of you're definitely going to want to be on flight following when you're anywhere near LA all the time. So just being on your game of practicing your radio communication, studying the airspace. You're pretty much never going to go through the Bravos. You got to stay under it everywhere except in the Special Flight Rules area. And there's a couple other routes close to the Special Flight Rules area, like the coastal route and the Coliseum route. And those are published on the back of the terminal chart. You can see they have specific routes where you talk to ATC and you can transit the Bravo. So I know there's lots of information on the internet about that stuff, but just studying the chart is pretty good. And watching my video about the Special Flight Rules area is good. What else would I say about flying in the LA area? The controllers here are great. And if you fly in somewhat busy airspace, you'll probably adapt to it pretty well. If you're coming from completely just untowered, uncontrolled airports all the time, it might be a little difficult. You might want to get a CFI to go up with you and kind of show you around the first time and show you how things are done.
I was reading a comment earlier from someone in here in the chat. Fowler 28379 said, "Funny story. Was showing my dad in Florida Socal's new plane video, and all of a sudden my dad yelled, 'That's my mechanic, Dawn.' He couldn't believe that someone from California used Dawn, and then he followed up and said, 'How did you find Dawn the mechanic?'"
Oh yeah, Don is a great guy. very unique individual. I love him. He's amazing, and he's like a Piper guru. And I met him on a forum, on a type forum, when I was first looking for a Cherokee 180. I wasn't even sure what kind of plane, and started narrowing it down to the 180. And we started chatting on the phone, and he just wanted to help me out and educate me about the Pipers and help me look on trade a plane and the other places. And then ultimately I bought a plane that was close to Florida. And I said, I'm going to, buy this plane. There's probably some things I want to do. And he said, oh, I could probably do some of the work. I'm an A&P with an IA, and he lives at an air park. So he offered to put in an engine monitor and do a couple other small things to the 180. And I agreed. So he actually went and picked up the plane with a friend and took it to his place, did the work. And then I had it ferried back to LA. So that was the 180. When it came time for the 6, he helped me out finding it, and then offered to do the whole renovation on it, which was absolutely amazing. I got super lucky.
It was incredible. I really, that was an incredible renovation. In fact, you turned me on to the autopilot that you ended up using. We kick that around here a lot, and not for this plane, but I have a flying club here. We've got 3 planes. We've got a really nice Cherokee 235 that needs an autopilot. So it was about the same time we were kind of kicking that around. Nathan Ballard said that he heard Eric was giving away 631 Bravo whiskey in a raffle tonight. Unfortunately, that is just a rumor, I would assume. Unless something you want to tell us.
No, I'm not giving it away in a raffle yet. Right. Not yet. It's not out of the realm of possibility. You never know.
Now, there's a reason to join the Patreon right there, right? Like, that's the only way you're going to find out if the plane's coming up for free. Maybe you just make it like one of those. You ever see that whole thing about the million mile Lexus? Like the Lexus that made it to 1 million miles, and all these different car or auto YouTubers were just sort of passing it off from one to the other, and they were all just enjoying this old beat up Lexus that was the 1 million mile Lexus. I'm wondering maybe that's the fate of your airplane, is that eventually you just kind of give it up to the community, and everybody just kind of has a month or so with it, and then makes videos and things and shares them back with you. So just consider just giving it away to just kind of everyone.
Yeah, man, that would be awesome.
That sounds great.
You never know what's gonna happen,
man.
You wouldn't rule anything out.
That plane is so amazing. It makes me feel like I've never actually flown an airplane. Just the avionics alone. I mean, I saw the video about just the audio panel that you made a couple years back or whatever, and I'm like, I'm just like, the plane I am in is like, you press the button. Can I hear myself? Great. Can I transmit? Great. Well, that's all she does, like it's, that whole spatial separation of 2 channels and just all of the options. I didn't even know people existed in that world. It's like you're in some other universe.
Yeah, that audio panel is great. And I picked it because, passenger, to try to get my family to fly. I'm like, how can I make this as good for them as possible? It's like, well, they all get they each have their own music inputs, and they can control, not hear the ATC and control their volumes separately. So that was just like, a reason to get that, to make them happy and always want to go. That was the key. Just try to get them to want to go on the adventure so I could fly more.
Well, you do a good job of mixing up, sort of product review for product walkthrough type things versus adventure storytelling, all that. Is there any aspect of what you present that seems to be maybe more satisfying or is more fun to do? Or because I can imagine sometimes that the adventures maybe are perhaps more work because it involves more people and it's traveling and all these things, whereas like an avionics type of thing, or you can be inventive from the ground and use existing footage or something. So what's the most fun thing for you to do?
Yeah, I really like creating the adventure stuff where we go on something where an adventure where there's some kind of meaning, to it, like a trip that means something, or something happens. Like I've got this trip that we did for Father's Day that I've got a cut, that we went up to near San Luis Obispo, and we went, like on the dunes, on the sand dunes with like boogie boards, and they had arranged everything. We went like on the dune buggies, and it was such a great day of hanging out with the family and connecting, all around, centered around aviation. And there's like so much like heart to that,
Mm, yeah.
those are really fun to edit and put together, but they take a lot more time. Whenever I start getting footage that's not in the airplane, it just takes more time, or cutting like a music montage or something, or creating those moments, or telling the story in those moments. It's more time consuming, but ultimately more rewarding, because I watch it back. Like the paragliding adventure that we did
Yeah.
was creatively also one of the most satisfying videos. And there's so much in there, so much emotion in there for me. And it just took a long time to put together, but it's more rewarding. Like watching it back, I'll go back and watch that and be like, yeah, that was a moment in our lives that was really special. That was a really special trip. And I've always got that memory of it,
Mm.
That's great. I was rewatching. I've seen everything. I mean, at one point, but I was rewatching a few this week, kind of in preparation for tonight. And I think it trapped above the wildfires in the hypoxia and that whole setting. That may have been the one. I can't remember if it was that one or one of them. Towards the end. You did this big, not a flashback montage, but like from the previous trip, you were trying to be a tour guide the whole time. And I loved how you found all of the bits where it was all just jump cuts from the same camera angle of you, like, oh, look, the mountains over here. Oh, I wanted to show, look at this mountain. And eventually they're like, can you talk less? And I just thought, like, those moments, the way you turn those in the stories and the music select, I mean, all of it, like, I mean, my daughter, who's 17, who flies with me a good deal in these planes, was watching some of these with me this week. And I don't know that she had seen any of your content before, but even my 17-year-old daughter was kind of like, laughing like out loud. And it was kind of cool. Like, I just think there's such an art to that storytelling, and it does take time. I mean, those, like, just even find those like to have went through a flight to find the 15 or 18 times that you pointed out an event, like, just that labor, I mean, that's the stuff that takes the time, but boy, it makes such a difference in terms of the story and moving the thing forward.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it is time consuming to get that stuff together. I also think that, it's important. I try to like make fun of myself sometimes. It's part of the not taking yourself too seriously. And I thought in that video where things get serious, it was nice to have a little making fun of yourself kind of thing. Like, look at this idiot. So yeah, it's good to have that perspective. I think not, try
So
not to be afraid to like look stupid.
For sure.
we all do it. Um, so one of my questions is, what is, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, like, what's your end game? Like, what's your desired outcome? It used to be that people would make localized sort of internet content with this aspiration, perhaps, of really in the back of their mind, they're thinking, I want a TV show on Discovery, or like whatever, I don't know, something. But now it seems like it's a standalone world to where you don't necessarily have to be that aspirational about it, but you're producing essentially television quality material on YouTube. So it kind of begs the question, is it just something where it's like, as long as I'm doing this, I'm just going to do this because it just feels good to do it? Or is there some desired outcome or place you're trying to get with it or grow it to?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I would just like to grow the community more, and I would love to. We're starting to do with the Patreon. We're starting to do some meetups and planning some flying trips when my schedule allows. We're talking about doing a Mexico trip to see the whales in the spring, and I would like that. I would like to grow that, because that is part of the most rewarding stuff. I
Yeah.
don't I don't want a TV show on, people have said that to me too. My buddy's like, "Oh, you guys could have your own like reality show." I'm like, "Yeah, I definitely don't want to do that." Um,
Right.
but yeah, I would like to just make more content, tell more stories, and see where it goes. It would be nice to, be able to increase the production value a little with more budgets, or like on special trips have a, a camera person, like I did with the paragliding video. I had somebody who was a paraglider, but also like a filmmaker, just came out of Santa Barbara, and he shot a lot of footage for us and did a beautiful job. I
Yeah.
would love to have somebody like that with us on some of these trips, not all of them, but some of the trips where I know it's going to be more of an adventure if we do things like that again.
Yeah.
And just to kind of up the scope of things and make some more epic videos. I think creatively that'd be a fun place to go.
for sure.
Do you feel like that the observation of the experiment at some level is problematic, perhaps like with the experiences that you're just trying to have organically, but the more production mindedness and the because I mean, right, even as of now, you're having to like get your claps and you're having to stop the natural flow of what you'd be doing without the cameras probably pretty often, right, to sort of address the production needs while having this organic experience. Do you ever feel like that's in contention or something that's be mindfully balanced?
It, I'll tell you, in the flying part of it, it doesn't, because I tend to set the GoPros up and record and then not worry about them. The exception to that was this last trip with Jason Miller, he was flying the airplane most of the time. And I said, you're going to fly. I'll worry about all the cameras. So I was starting and stopping, and I was like shooting with my phone. I've got a lot more in this video that I'm working on now, shooting out the window and things like that. But normally I just set them, record the audio, and we go. Occasionally, if we're in cruise and I know nothing's happening for like an hour, I'll cut all the cameras. I'll just push the button and then start them back up. I tend not to fuss with this stuff, so it doesn't really interrupt my flow of flying. But on the ground, it definitely can get in the way of like our family vacation. And I had started, like with our Sedona video, I had my Sony A7S, the like DSLR, and I had rented a lens, and I was out to like make the video, and I had 360 cameras in this Jeep and everything. And I've kind of toned that back a little bit. Now I just start using the phone and grab things when I can and try to get the moments and not always be worrying about it, because it does detract from the actual experience of it. So I'm trying to find that balance of just enjoying the trips and making some content.
Yeah, that's very similar. We've heard that kind of thought before from others, and me, Brian, and I both included. It's like that's been my thing from the beginning, which is like start the cameras and then I don't think about them again. And I've lost many a thing because I, didn't check my audio recorder again, and something had happened and I don't have audio, or like one camera didn't start for some reason and I missed it, but I don't check it again in flight. And so I've missed many a flight video from that mindset. But I do think it's a wise mindset, and we try to tell people all the time, like it's got to be secondary to like flying the airplane. That's the the secondary part if you're going to do it.
Hey, you had the perfect camera angle for the baggage door, though.
that autopilot video that you were referencing, I had shot that whole video, came back, and I was transferring the audio file to the computer, and the app that I was using, if the iPad sleeps, it deletes the file. So I made like this whole autopilot review, all the features of it. I did the flight just for the video, and the ATC intercom audio like just disappeared. I had to redo that entire video, and it's a good thing it was during the pandemic when I had no work, because otherwise I would have been like, you know what, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I almost did that, said I'm not doing it. But so that autopilot review is the second time around. I mean, like the whole thing, it was so horrible.
That's frustrating.
Yeah.
We're in the weeds now, but it's a good question. A lot of people always want to know about how do you power your GoPros. Elliot asked, use batteries or external power sources. What do you do for your cameras?
Oh yeah. I covered that a little bit in that video series on Patreon.
Well, don't give it all away.
No, I'm going to tell. Here it is.
Let's just pull it up here. Let's go.
So on the wing, I use I use GoPro 7s. That's what I'm using now, just because I borrowed some indefinitely from a friend, and that's what he had. So I bought a couple other ones on my own. So I'm using a couple borrowed GoPros and a couple of my own, but they're GoPro 7s, and I use a external case. It's like a battery case. I think it's called the Refuel, and I use that on the wing.
This is making me sick, man.
Okay. Can someone tell me why those don't exist for GoPros that aren't like 4 through 7?
The only one is the one. I have 4 or 5
right.
GoPro Hero 8s. They made those battery packs for every GoPro back to like 1983. And then after, like from the 9 on, they just singled out exactly the one that I bought a bunch of and said, you're never going to get any extended batteries. No one. What is this? But anyway, good answer, Eric. Thank you for telling us that. It's just a sore spot for me because
I don't know why they did that.
Chris just keeps making fun of me because
I use the same thing. It's the Refuel, and it's perfect, and it lasts forever. And that's what I use that's what I use for my exterior cameras too.
6 hours. And then the trick for the exterior cameras is, like you're going to go on a 4-hour flight. You're going to want to shoot the takeoff, you can look at your chart and say, what's the interesting terrain, or where do I think things are going to happen, or where am I going to get into the weather? And you're going to want the landing. And then you can use this GoPro Labs feature to program a QR code that can scan the camera. You put the firmware on there, you scan it, and then you can say like, record for 15 minutes, shut down for 15 minutes or half an hour, record for 20 minutes, shut down for an hour, record for an hour. You can program all these things with it. So that's a good way to save battery and card space too, is to kind of do that. So I've been doing that. And then on the inside cameras, I just use like external iPhone batteries and cable them and tuck those in a pocket or whatever, try to make the cable neat or not even. Yeah. And there's a couple ones that I take the battery out of the GoPro and I only use that because the GoPro will get hotter if you leave the battery in, and use an external because it's trying to charge the battery too. So it overheats more easily if you leave the battery in. Just take the battery out, and then I have those external batteries, and there's, a couple that I prefer, but you can use almost any one of them.
So obviously we got to wrap up here fairly soon, but I wanted to run one thing by you that you can feel free to talk about ad nauseum or not. But I'm curious, what, I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of other aviation content that is out there. What, if any, where do you see perhaps gaps or opportunities, or do you wish that people were doing more things like X?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I can hear the crickets. This is perfect.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I don't watch a ton of other aviation content, mostly because I don't have time.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always liked what Flight Chops has done.
Yeah.
He does like cool, interesting stuff. I also like some of the nitty gritty, like ATC stuff, or just like really getting into a situation and kind of dissecting every little detail about it. And I do some of that with Jason. We have like a series on the Patreon that we do that's like debriefing certain situations. And he's putting that in his like ground school app too, which is scenario based kind of stuff. So he'll take one of our scenarios and talk about all the finer points of it, basically like dissecting every little bit of it and all the decision making and stuff. And I think that analytical look at some of the decision making can be really valuable. And I try to put that in there when it's appropriate. Like the next video I have coming out is going to be a lot of that stuff, because we're coming back from Osh, dodging storms through Utah, and there's tons to consider. So I really I think there could be more of that kind of stuff instead of just things that are trying to like grab attention.
Right. I'll tell you, and I've actually already told you that last video that now you're doing the part 2 of. I feel like there's so much more of that I've been looking for. I was so glad to see that. It was because it's not, clickbaity excitement stuff, right? It's the real world. You're flying, subtly conditions are changing, and you've got to slowly be modulating your decision making, your thinking, looking for lines where you're going to go. And as a newer pilot, I have about 200 hours. 100 hours across country, but most of it's been, pretty fair weather flying. I'm only now just getting into the point where I'm starting to kind of push myself to, out there, right? In those scenarios where it's like not dangerous, but just I'm having to think a lot more dynamically and have a lot more outs and figuring out what's going on. I love that stuff, man. It's so valuable. Thank you for doing that, because there's really, I actually even thought about having an instructor when I was, training. I was like, why don't we just go out and hunt weird scenarios? Like, why are we just always doing these maneuvers and things like on these cross countries? The extent of that on cross countries was, I'm like, is that okay? Like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like that's all I got. You know what I mean? So thank you for doing that. It's super helpful.
Oh yeah, thanks. I think those are fun to put together, and when those situations come up, I think it can be valuable, and hopefully people enjoy it.
Well, as we're wrapping things up here, why not take just a minute, if you don't mind? Just we've covered it a bunch, but how can people find you? What are you doing? Where are you? How do we get people connected to you who may not be already, that want to follow your content? I'm definitely coming for the filmmaking content, because I can use all of that. So what's tell people how to get you?
Yeah, so patreon.com/Socal Flying Monkey for the Patreon membership, which is all the bonus content, the Discord chat, the fly-ins, meetups, our how to fly to Mexico, guide, which we didn't really talk about here, but is something I'm really excited about. So yeah, the Patreon, and then Instagram, which is Socal Flying Monkey on Instagram, and of course, youtube.com/Socal Flying Monkey on YouTube. And yeah, we have a Facebook page too, Socal Flying Monkey on Facebook. So I guess those are all the places.
That's fantastic, man. Well, this has been so much fun. It was kind of like we keep saying we had the opposing basis podcast guys on earlier. There's just such a handful of people that for me have just been such a part. I'm so new to aviation just in the last 4 years, and you have been at the top of my list to get to talk to, and have been super just inspiring for me just along my journey to see the adventures that you're taking. So this really has been an honor personally for me to get to hang out with you for an hour, and we're super grateful for your time. I know you're busy and seeing Dave Matthews 800 times and all the things, but it was so awesome to have you on. Thank you so much.
Oh man, thanks so much for having me on. It was a real pleasure, and it's just great to connect with you guys about aviation, which is such an amazing privilege that we have.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, do you have Dave Matthews in your baggage, or like did you kidnap him in your Cherokee? Because I feel like he's just wherever you are. I can't figure it out. But no, it's so cool you're doing that. And I also just wanted to make sure that you pledge at some point, even if you're just making it up, to come see me in Nashville, go to West Virginia, see Chris, because clearly you're just flying around all the time. So just stop by. And if you're, in Nashville, it's basically kind of like a redneck LA. So you should feel totally fine here.
I'm sure that I'm going to be shooting a commercial at some point in Nashville, so I'll definitely connect with you. I've been there once or twice for work, so it'll happen. It'll definitely happen.
All right.
Well, thank you, Brian, for podcasting with me as always. Everyone in the chat, we had a great group of folks tonight. I think we had a hybrid. Some of Eric's folks came over, and it was cool to hang out with some of your folks tonight. And don't forget, if you're listening to the audio version of this, please join us every other Wednesday at 8:00 at youtube.com/midlifepilot. All right. Good night.